Hey everyone, welcome to Professor Long's Lectures in Anatomy and Physiology. I'm Professor Bob Long. As you know, these videos are intended for students who are in my course at Del Mar College and who are taking my classes. But any of y'all out in YouTube land that find this helpful, please use them. Please hit like and subscribe. If you like my videos, the more likes and the more views I get, the better it is, the more it might spread. And eventually I might turn this into something where I can try to help as many students across the land as possible. Anyway, and if you want to follow all my videos, if I load new ones, you can hit subscribe, or you can always just go to my YouTube channel. I have it divided into Human Anatomy Physiology 1 lectures and labs, and Human A&P 2 lectures and labs, because in most schools this is a 2-semester course. Now, what we're doing today is we're doing a continuation of the vascular system of the body. Arteries in red, veins are blue. You guys have been hearing me say that if you're watching my videos. Arteries are red, veins are blue, except for the pulmonaries. They're reversed because of the oxygenated, deoxygenated blood. Now, right now, my focus is not on the wireman. You'll have to watch the videos where I go over the wireman, but I'm trying to keep the videos short so that your attention span can follow along and you can keep focused, because it's very difficult to stay focused on really, really long videos. So today what we're going to do is, in this video, we're going to follow the aorta down, and we're going to learn some of the major branches, go into the major organs of the abdomen. Okay, and that's all that we're going to do. We've already done the vessels to the head. We've already done the vessels to the arm in previous videos. Now we're going to do the vessels to the abdomen. And again, the best way to learn, in my opinion, is to take a red pen or pencil or a red marker on a board and draw this stuff out to where that you could draw the roadmap as if you had to teach the vessels to your classmates without any notes or anything. You just have to have it burned into your brain through repetition, 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 repetition. So I'm going to do the vessels going to the abdomen, and then I'm going to stop the video. We'll have one more artery video of the vessels to the leg, and then we'll do a series of videos of the vessels, of the veins, to each one of those regions of the body. When you see each video, I'm going to have a section for the head, for the arm, the abdomen, the leg, and next to that video should be, the next video in the series should be the wireman. I'm going to zoom in on wireman so that you can see on the wireman, because this is where you get tested or gives you a little bit more three-dimensional analysis. Now, with a video, you don't get the 3D analysis. I really wish that you could be here next to me and we could be going over this and you could see the orientation. But there's a lot of cool online software that allows you to do that. Let me push wireman out of the way. Oops, I'm running over something and it's making rude noises. That's not me. But anyway, I apologize for that. But there's something stuck on the wheel and I'm not going to start this video over. Now we're going to do the vessels going to the abdomen, but we always start at the heart. We always go through the aorta so we can always get acquainted or have our awareness of where we're at along the aorta. It really helps. When you are in surgery and you're trying to find a vessel, sometimes you have a small opening in the body. You don't have all the other landmarks. So you actually have to go through and start tracing things and say, okay, if this goes here and that goes there, then this must be that. Because you have this three-dimensional awareness, this map in your brain of where all the arteries go. That's why I like drawing it this way. So now, because we're going to go to the abdomen, I'm going to draw the heart kind of high so I can have the aorta coming down, and then we will do our key over here to all the vessels. So here's the heart, here's the aorta that arches back and to the left. It's going to come down, and I'm going to make it really long, and then it's going to split there, okay? I'm going to thicken it up just a little bit because the aorta is the largest, thickest vessel in the human body, or the largest artery in the human body. I should not say it's the largest vessel, but it's the largest artery in the body. As the aorta comes out of the heart, one of our landmarks on the models is the liver, which really crosses over in front of the aorta. It would be sitting here like this, and it would cross over in front of the aorta, but I'm not going to draw it that way. And sitting on top of the aorta is a light blue structure on our models, and that represents a muscle called the diaphragm. Okay, now as we come out of the heart, the aorta ascends, arches over, and descends is the thoracic aorta. And even on wireman, it's not really to scale. The thoracic aorta is much shorter than the abdominal aorta. Not quite this ratio off, but again, this is just to get a sense of awareness. It is not drawn to scale. There are three major branches coming off the thoracic aorta or the aortic arch. We know that this is the brachiocephalic artery. That's my BC. This is my left common carotid artery. And this is my left subclavian artery. I'm just going to put sub C. We already covered these in a previous video. Every time you come out of the heart, it's brachiocephalic, left common carotid, left subclavian, in that order. Okay. Then we come down the descending aorta, the thoracic aorta, and we pass through the diaphragm and the liver and becomes the abdominal aorta. So always and forever, number one on our picture is always going to be the aorta. Now, on our wireman, these are all kind of scrunched together. And a lot of people get very confused by this. And really, there are 5 branches coming off the abdominal aorta. That's it, just 5. And they come off in a specific order. Some of them are going to come a little anteriorly and then dive off to the right or the left. Some come off to the right or to the left. But since almost all of these, almost all, not all, have only one, and there's not a right and a left, we're not going to have a right or left with most of the names. You have to remember, if it's red, it's an artery. If it's blue, it's a vein, except for the pulmonaries. If I put right or left on the name, that means there's another one on the opposite side of the body. If I do not include right or left in the name, that means there's only one of those. Okay. As we come down just below the liver, there's going to be a vessel that comes off and goes a little bit forward, and then it's going to split and go to 3 major organs. Okay. And so this vessel, I'm actually going to draw it a different color because I want you to see, well, no, I'm not. I'm going to use the red, but I want you to see that it would actually kind of come anterior, but I can't draw into the air. And so this branch, I'm going to erase this number 1 here, but this branch is going to come anteriorly. Again, I can't draw it going anterior, and it's going to split. It's a very short vessel, really. And so this would be number 1, but this vessel right here is going to be called the Celiac Trunk. Oops, not truck. Trunk. And nowadays it is spelled this way. Okay? It's the Celiac Trunk. You'll see some books that spell it this way. It looks like the word celiac or coeliac, but it's really pronounced celiac. And part of the reason is, in Old Latin, they had a letter that was like this. Instead of just an E, if you had this letter, it meant the E was pronounced like an S. And then we got to modern typewriters, they couldn't do that, so they just spelled it this way, and nowadays they just do it like this, okay? We didn't have this on typewriters, they didn't have that button, we don't have that letter in the English language. So that's kind of why it evolved that way. The term coelom, it's spelled this way. Coelom comes from the term seal, which means an empty space. And the coelom is another term that we often use for the hollow tube that runs as our digestive tract. And this was thought to go there, so they called it celiac trunk. Now, the celiac trunk is going to split into 3 other vessels. And one of the vessels is going to go to this little structure out here that sits at the end of our pancreas. And this is going to be called the spleen. Your pancreas would run across here, and your spleen would sit way over here under your ribs on the left side. One of the branches is going to go up to the liver. So the branch that comes off the celiac trunk that goes to the spleen is going to be called the splenic artery. And there's only 1 E in it. It's pronounced splenic. And again, I'm not going to write out the word artery. I'm just going to abbreviate it. Another branch is going to come off the celiac trunk. It's going to go this way, and I'm changing the color, and it goes up into the liver. And the reason I used a different color, or tried to use a slightly different color, so you can see it crosses in front of the aorta here. And that vessel is going to be called the hepatic artery. And sometimes called the common hepatic artery because it'll split into a right and a left hepatic artery. But for now, we're just going to call it the hepatic artery, or however it appears on your list, you can name it that. The third branch is actually going to be 2 little vessels. One comes off the splenic, one comes off the hepatic, and they're both going to feed to your stomach. And so there's actually a right and a left, but they make a little tiny loop on our wire, man. And that is going to be called the gastric arteries. There's actually a left gastric artery and a right gastric artery, and they meet and they run into the stomach. And so that looks like a little loop called the gastric arteries or the gastric loop. So all of that is actually coming off of the splenic artery. Okay? Now, I told you there's 5 branches coming off here. Well, there's 5 by themselves, but the others come down this way. Okay? And a lot of times, actually, what I like to do, I'm not going to do this to y'all because I've already numbered them, but sometimes I do a 2 and I do an A, B, and C. But anyway, now if I go back to the aorta and I come down, there's going to be a vessel that comes off, and it really dives a little bit forward, but very much to the right side of the body here. It's a really large vessel coming off of the aorta, and it's going to go to a lot of your intestines, a lot of the intestinal tract here. And when you separate the intestines, if you've ever cleaned an animal or done a human dissection, like an autopsy or a dissection, when you pull the guts apart, there's this thin, almost see-through film that holds the guts together called the mesentery. And the mesentery is now defined as an organ because it serves a function. This blood vessel runs through that mesentery. So this blood vessel is going to be called the superior mesenteric artery. Okay? Anytime you have a superior, there's going to be an inferior, but we don't get to that yet. There's only one superior mesenteric artery, and then we're going to have some branches that come off, and they do this. Okay? They're going to go to the 2 kidneys, and one actually comes off on the left side slightly higher than the one on the right. I've drawn them a little closer than they need to be. But these 2 would go to your kidneys. And so since the kidneys are here, these branches are going to be the right and left renal arteries. Okay? The right one would go to the right side, the left one would go to the left kidney, obviously. I only put one number 7 here, but the number 7 would be the right and left renal arteries. Just after that, there's 2 little skinny vessels that come off, and I mean, they're kind of small. And again, this isn't drawn to scale, and these would actually go to what we call the gonads. Now, the gonads, if you're a male, are the testes. The gonads, if you're a female, are the ovaries. And when we are first developing in the womb, we all start off developing as females, and then if you have the Y chromosome, and you start releasing the male sex hormones, then the ovaries morph into the testes. The ovarian arteries become the testicular arteries. The penis morphs, or the clitoris morphs into the penis. The labia morph into the scrotum. And all the anatomy changes from the female anatomy to the male anatomy. There's a lot of changes that go on there based on our genetics. So, but they all start in the abdomen, and as the ovaries morph into the testes if you're male, right before birth or just about birth time, those testes will descend from the abdomen through a tube called the inguinal canal and drop into the scrotum. It's called the descension or descending testicles, right? The descension of the testes. Now, if they get trapped in the body, then a male can have what's called an undescended testicle. We'll talk about the importance of that when we do all of this anatomy and the reproductive system. But the testes start in the abdomen, and then they will actually drop down into the scrotum. So these arteries could be called the ovarian arteries if you were female, the testicular arteries if you're male. But in general, we will call these the gonadal arteries because that covers both male and female. Okay. And I do know we're in a day and age where people don't want to use gender pronouns and assign gender. But when it comes to health, our genetics, we have to know if someone was born male or female, and or genetically a male or female, because that has a lot to do with our health and our physiology. Females don't get testicular cancer. they get ovarian cancer, they can get uterine cancer. Males don't have a uterus. Males can get prostate cancers, but females can't because they don't have a prostate. And so it's important to know some of this stuff because there are some diseases that are much more prevalent in females, much more prevalent in males, and some that afflict both. Nonetheless, those would be the gonadal arteries, or you might say ovarian and testicular arteries if we were talking about a particular gender. Now, if I go beyond that, there's another large vessel that's going to go to my intestines. Again, this is not drawn to scale, but I've stretched it out so that we can follow. This one is going to be called the inferior mesenteric artery. Okay? So I have a superior mesenteric, and then I have an inferior mesenteric, and they run through the mesentery. And then the aorta continues down, so all of this vessel is still number one all the way down. Aorta, 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 until it splits. At the very end, it's going to split into these two, and I'm going to put them as number 10 here, and that is going to be the right and left common iliac arteries, because they're going to be about where the iliac line is here. Okay? So those are the vessels of the abdomen that you need to learn. Now, I did tell you there's only 5 coming off the aorta. So if we could skip these 3 right here, they really go in this order: celiac, superior mesenteric, renals, gonadals, inferior mesenteric. Celiac trunk, superior mesenteric, renals, gonadals, inferior mesenteric. Celiac trunk, superior mesenteric, renals, gonadals, inferior mesenteric. If you could just learn that: celiac trunk, superior mesenteric, right and left renals, right and left gonadals, inferior mesenteric, and then the aorta ends, where the right and left common iliac starts. Once you learn that, then you can go back to your celiac trunk and you can go splenic, hepatic, and gastric. Splenic to the spleen, hepatic to the liver, gastric loop connects the two. Okay, to me that's an easier way to learn it. And we actually used to do this. When I got my test paper, I flipped it over and I did that right off the top of my head. If you have it written down on your hand or a piece of paper, that's cheating. But if you can do what's called information dumping, things that's hard to remember, you put it in your brain at the last second, and as soon as you start your test, you write it on the back of the test or something. Then you can refer to it. Me and my classmates used to always do that. Celiac, superior, renals, gonadals, inferior. All off the aorta. Celiac trunk, superior mesenteric, renals, gonadals, inferior mesenteric. And then my celiac trunk has the splenic, the hepatic, and the gastric connecting them. We would draw that and label them, and we had it all in our brains the same way that you're going to do so. Okay? All right, so listen. When it comes to the wire man, it looks like a bowl of red spaghetti, and you can see some of these large vessels, and there's some that we didn't name that connect here. We're going to do the video of that at a later time, but for right now, I just wanted to cover the drawing so that you can learn the vessels to the abdomen. And remember, the reason I'm doing small chunks is because your brain can only remember small chunks. If we try to do all of the vessels from beginning to end for the arteries, you wouldn't remember anything. So do one section at a time. The head, then the arm, then the abdomen. Learn them in small chunks. Find any trick or way that you can memorize it, and then do that. Anyway, I hope you had as much fun as I did. I hope you learned something. I hope you're enjoying your anatomy experience. And I hope this helps you do better on your tests. I'll see you on the flip side. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.